Okay, so we all know that the UK is finally leaving the EU. There was a referendum, which is a vote on one issue, in the UK in 2016, and we narrowly voted to leave the EU, much to the dismay of then Prime Minister David Cameron. He sort of held the referendum as an election promise when he was up for re-election in 2015. He thought everyone would vote to stay, and it kind of went the other way, which then led to him resigning. So we know that we've now left. We know that it's been a big turmoil with Theresa May taking over, that not working out, and then Boris Johnson, him proroguing Parliament in August, September 2019, which, if you remember, because we've got an uncodified constitution, there was no rules there saying he couldn't do that. He wanted to prorogue Parliament or pause Parliament so he could get Brexit through. However, Gina Miller, a regular everyday citizen, took him to the Supreme Court, took the government to the Supreme Court to say that it was unconstitutional to prorogue Parliament. She won, and Parliament had to go back to session. A massive show of how citizens can participate in everyday laws and in everyday the government of this country. It also shows how we can actually make a difference, be an active citizen. So what you might have now is you might have questions on the EU, so what it was there for, what its role was. You might have 4-mark questions on reasons why people wanted to leave or stay, and you could have an 8-mark question on whether it was the right decision to leave or not. So what was the EU then? It started off many years before that. It turned to the EU in 1994. And regulations came in that a lot of UK citizens had problems with, things like how bendy your bananas should be. And you can see some of the arguments about that. So, what we're going to look at then is whether leaving the EU, Brexit as it's come to be, was a good decision or whether we should have stayed in. So what is the EU then? Well, it goes back, as most of these international organisations do, from the end of the Second World War. The countries in Europe decided they were going to work together, but it wasn't about peace, it wasn't about anything like that. It was about coal and steel. So basically, it was more of an economic kind of working thing back then. So it started off as the European Steel and Coal Community, formed in 1951 between Belgium, France, West Germany, Italy, the Netherlands and Luxembourg. But that was the real beginnings of the EU. The UK didn't want to be involved at first. We eventually joined quite a bit later in 1975. We had a referendum back then, a vote on one issue, and we voted to join the Common Market, as it was then known. The EU as we know today was named in 1993 under the Maastricht Treaty. This is a really important piece of legislation that you do need to know. It gave us shared values such as freedom of movement. That's why there's 1 million Brits who live in Spain. That's why we have many members of the EU who live in this country. It also was about human rights. So we've got the European Convention on Human Rights, which is spread across the countries. It's about representing and respect of national democracy, the European Parliament and justice, and also about shared ideas on economic wealth and prosperity. All those years later, though, in 2016, we voted to leave. So there's some quick questions on the screen for you, and I'll reveal the answers. Okay, you have got a sheet of information about the EU. It tells you different aspects of the EU, such as politics, laws, and all those kind of things. You're going to decide what's good about being in the EU and also what's bad about being in the EU for each of those different aspects. Then what we're going to do is turn this into an 8-mark question. So arguments for Brexit and arguments against. So here's the information then. If we look at politics, the British government had an input into events in Europe. Why is that a good thing? On the bad side of it though, the EU had an input into events in the British government. So it works both ways. We get a say in Europe, but the Europe gets a say with us. So then you use both of those facts and come up with a decision. Same with social and cultural. So on the good side, different nations share ideas, becoming one community to avoid conflict. That's good because, and you finish it off. However, mixing together different countries means national identities become blurred. Why might not that be a good thing? And again, you make up your decision on the social situation. Then we move to money in the economy. It's good because the UK gave money to the UK to build healthcare facilities and financially supported for British farmers. That's brilliant. Explain why. But on the negative, the UK gave money to the EU to support international organisations such as the European Parliament. Think about that extra tax money and how that could have been spent. And again, make your decision. Economically, the EU is good or bad because. And then lastly, laws. The EU members share information to fight crime through Interpol, Europe Police. Why is that a good thing? Think about if somebody commits a crime in this country and they run off to Europe, we can get their help. But on the negative, countries' courts could be overruled by the European Courts of Human Rights, like what happened with us and allowing prisoners to vote. If you remember, our government said no, the European Court of Human Rights said yes. And again, you conclude your idea legally. You then use those arguments to formulate your 8-mark question, whether being in the EU was a good thing or a bad thing. Couple of points on each side, fully explained using this information, and then your conclusion. There's a writing frame there for you to use as well if you want to. If you then have a look, you've got a couple of sources. So in source A, we've got a campaign bus for Vote Leave. And it says, we send the EU £350 million per week. Let's fund our NHS or hospitals instead. Vote Leave. We've then got on source B, we've got Nigel Farage telling Susanna Reid it was a mistake for the Leave campaign to claim there'd be £350 million per week because it quite simply wasn't there. So, have a think about those. What message is source A giving in? What does source B give to people who voted Leave? What does it make them think? What do you think it's saying overall about the campaign methods, and what do you think it's saying about what people were ready to believe? So think about all the information that's in sources A and B. Do you think that the result should still stand? Do you think the result should still stand now, all those years later? Remember, during the coronavirus crisis, is the second biggest bit of news. Is Boris Johnson still trying to get through Brexit negotiations?